Okay, so think about it for a second. How many times today have you already hit play?
Yeah,
Whether it's music on your commute or that podcast everyone's talking about, maybe an audiobook while you work.
right.
We're just surrounded by audio.
Totally.
But what if you were the one creating it?
Mm-hmm.
And not just any audio. Imagine using it to make learning seriously engaging.
Yeah.
That's what we're diving into today, specifically for educational purposes. Student-created podcasts, debates, speeches, even radio dramas.
Wow. Yeah. All of that and more.
All of those and more are mentioned in Audio Adventures Ahoy,
Okay.
which is a presentation from VSTE 2024 by Adam Schechter.
I know, Adam. Yeah.
He's an instructional technology coach, so you know he's got the goods.
He really does. What I find really interesting is that he doesn't just jump into the how-to.
Okay.
He starts by laying out a compelling argument for why audio is such a potent learning tool.
I'm all ears.
Yeah.
I have to admit, though, I'm already picturing kids getting totally immersed in creating a radio drama about the American Revolution.
Exactly. That's precisely the kind of creative spark he's talking about.
Uh-huh.
He points out that student-produced audio can be incredible for boosting not just creativity, but also critical thinking, collaboration skills. It even ties into meeting educational standards.
Okay, so I'm sold on the why. But I'm guessing before we unleash students with microphones, a little planning might be in order.
You are so right. Schechter really emphasizes that intentional planning is key.
Yeah.
He even has this VSTE podcast planning doc he uses with students.
Oh, interesting.
It's all about setting clear expectations without stifling their creative freedom.
Now that's the balance, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of things does he suggest, including in this planning document?
Well, based on his overall approach, it likely covers things like specifying the format.
Okay.
Like, is it a debate, an interview, a fictional story?
Right.
Then there's length, content guidelines, and of course, making sure students understand the equipment and how the editing process works.
You've piqued my curiosity. I need to get my hands on that document. But let's be real. The equipment part can feel overwhelming.
It can, yeah.
Luckily, Schechter breaks down a bunch of different setups.
He does, and it's fascinating how he explains not just what the gear is, but why you'd choose one over another.
Yeah.
For instance, he talks about the Zoom H6, which is super versatile, great for field recording.
So that one, it can handle multiple mics too, which seems perfect for student collaborations.
Yeah.
And the price wasn't outrageous either, if I remember correctly.
You've got a great memory. It's around $273, which is pretty reasonable compared to similar options. But if you're picturing a classroom podcasting studio, the Rodecaster might be more up your alley.
That's the one that looks all high-tech, right? I bet it
Yeah.
costs a pretty penny.
It does have a higher price tag,
Yeah.
around $699,
Okay.
but it's specifically designed for podcasting.
Right.
Think like built-in sound effects, multi-track recording, features you won't find on a basic recorder.
Okay, that makes sense. So if the Rodecaster's for the studio, what about when students are out in the wild, gathering interviews or capturing soundscapes for a project?
Schechter recommends the Rode Wireless Pro for that. It's all about mobility, and it comes in at $364.
Oh, yeah.
Not the cheapest option, but you're paying for that freedom and flexibility.
Now, that's quite an investment for some schools. Does Schechter offer any recommendations for those on a tighter budget?
Absolutely. He understands that not every classroom has a Hollywood-sized budget.
Right.
For simple recording needs, he suggests the Samson Go mic.
Okay.
It's a budget-friendly USB mic at just $30.
Wow.
Or, if you want a slight step up in quality, the Rode NT USB Plus for around $170.
So whether you're aiming for high-fidelity recordings or just starting out, there's a tool out there.
Exactly.
It's amazing how much tech is packed into such a tiny little mic.
That's what's so great about Schechter's approach. He gives you a range of options and helps you understand the trade-offs involved so you can make the best choice for your students and your budget.
All right, so we've got our why, we've got our plan, and we've even got our mics ready to roll. Now you're probably wondering, what exactly can I do with all of this?
That's where Schechter really shines. He goes beyond the theory and dives into specific classroom applications.
Okay.
He gives this great example of students creating audio introductions in a language arts class.
Oh, interesting.
It's a simple way to get them comfortable with recording and expressing themselves vocally.
That's such a smart entry point. It takes the pressure off creating a whole podcast right away.
Right.
But for those who are ready to take the plunge, Schechter also talks about student-produced podcasts, was right?
He does, and he emphasizes that they can be so much more than just casual conversations.
Yeah.
He envisions students tackling real-world issues,
Okay.
conducting in-depth research, and synthesizing information to create compelling arguments. He even argues that in some cases, this kind of podcast project can be more effective for developing critical thinking than traditional debates.
That's a really interesting point because with a podcast, you can't just rely on quick thinking and on-the-spot responses. You have to really dig deep and back up your claims with evidence.
Exactly. And Schechter provides a ton of other project ideas to spark your imagination.
Okay.
We've already touched on podcasts and radio dramas, but he also mentions debates, persuasive speeches, even news broadcasts, all created by students.
Wow.
And get this, he even suggests creating instructional audio,
Okay.
like students recording explanations of complex concepts for their peers.
Wow, that's taking peer-to-peer learning to a whole new level. I love how he's constantly connecting these creative ideas back to educational standards, showing that audio isn't just a fun add-on, but a legitimate tool for reaching learning objectives.
Absolutely. He even ties it into a really cool initiative from the Library of Congress called the Great American Listen.
I've heard of that, yeah.
He suggests using it as inspiration for student projects, maybe having them conduct interviews or create audio documentaries based on historical recordings.
So the possibilities are pretty much endless. But I'm
Yeah.
curious, does Schechter address how to ensure these projects are actually successful? Because I can imagine some teachers feeling overwhelmed. Like, where do I even begin?
That's a valid concern, and Schechter doesn't shy away from the practicalities. He really stresses the importance of clear expectations.
Okay.
Students need to know the format, the length, the content guidelines, but remember that balance we talked about earlier. He's adamant about fostering choice and creativity within those guidelines.
Right, so it's not just about dictating every little detail.
Yeah,
It's about providing a framework while still allowing students to explore their own ideas and express themselves through audio.
exactly. And that's where his podcast planning doc comes in.
Right.
He actually walks teachers through using it with their students step by step. It's not just about the technical stuff, but also about helping students develop their ideas, organize their thoughts, and plan out their audio creation process.
That sounds like such a valuable resource, but let's be real. Not every teacher is a tech wizard. Some might be feeling a little intimidated by the equipment or the editing process. Does Schechter offer any support for those who are less tech savvy?
You bet. Remember all that awesome equipment we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
Well, Schechter provides detailed guides on how to use each piece.
Great.
And he even includes links to purchase the equipment, which is super helpful. He doesn't just throw a bunch of tech at you and say, good luck.
That's reassuring. But what about the editing part? I have to admit, that's the part that always trips me up.
Well, Schechter breaks down the editing process in a really approachable way.
Right.
He provides step-by-step instructions, helpful tips, and even goes into detail about different software options. He covers everything from free tools like Audacity to more professional software like Adobe Audition.
So he's basically holding our hands through the entire audio creation journey. That's fantastic, especially for those of us who are still getting our bearings in the world of audio editing.
And you know what's really cool? He doesn't frame it as needing to become an expert sound engineer. It's about empowering students to use audio as a tool for learning, for communicating, for unleashing their creativity.
I love that perspective. It's not about technical perfection. It's about giving students a voice and helping them share their ideas and perspectives with the world.
Exactly. And that's where the real magic of audio lies. It's about amplifying student voices and creating a space where their stories and ideas can be heard. But before we get too caught up in the excitement, there's one crucial element we haven't talked about yet.
Ooh, now you've got me on the edge of my seat. What's this missing piece of the audio puzzle?
It's all about sharing those amazing student-created audio projects with the world. After all, what good is a podcast if nobody listens to it, right, Light?
Good point. But sharing can feel a little daunting, too. Where do you even begin? Does Schechter offer any guidance on this front?
Yeah, sharing is a great point to bring up. We could have the most incredible student-produced podcast in the world, but if it's just sitting on someone's hard drive, it's not really reaching its full potential. Exactly. Schechter actually dedicates a good chunk of his presentation to exploring different ways to share student audio.
Okay.
He talks about familiar platforms like Google Drive,
Right.
which is great for sharing within a classroom or school community.
That makes sense, especially for projects that might be more formative in nature, where the focus is on feedback and revision. But what about when students are ready to share their work with a wider audience?
Schechter gets really excited about the possibilities of Spotify.
Uh-huh.
He sees it as a platform where students can create their own podcast channels, build an audience, and even connect with other young creators around the world.
Ooh, I love that. It's like turning the classroom into a mini podcasting network. Gives students a sense of purpose, knowing that their voices can reach beyond the classroom walls. But I also imagine there are some logistical considerations when it comes to using a platform like Spotify with students.
Oh, absolutely. Schechter doesn't shy away from the practicalities. He talks about the importance of getting parental permission, ensuring student privacy, and navigating any age restrictions that might be in place.
That's really important to address. We want to empower students to share their work, but we also want to do it responsibly and ethically.
Yeah.
But, beyond sharing with a wider audience, I think there's also a lot of value in sharing within the classroom itself.
You're so right. Schechter's a big advocate for peer feedback.
Yeah.
He believes that students can learn so much from listening to each other's work and providing constructive criticism.
I've always found peer feedback to be a bit of a mixed bag. Sometimes it's incredibly insightful, but other times it can be a little superficial or even hurtful. Does Schechter offer any guidance on how to make peer feedback more effective?
He does. He talks about the importance of setting clear guidelines for peer feedback.
Right.
Maybe even creating a rubric or checklist that students can use to ensure that their feedback is specific, constructive, and focused on the audio itself rather than personal opinions.
Oh, I like that idea. It takes the guesswork out of peer feedback and helps students focus on the elements that really matter, like clarity, pacing, and content. But speaking of feedback, I think it's important to acknowledge the teacher's role in providing feedback as well.
Absolutely. Schechter is adamant about teachers providing regular and meaningful feedback throughout the audio creation process.
Yeah.
He sees it as a crucial element in helping students develop their skills and refine their craft. He even suggests recording audio feedback, which can be a more personalized and engaging way to connect with students about their work.
I've tried that before, and I have to say, it makes a huge difference. Students are so much more receptive to feedback when they hear my voice, and it allows me to go into more detail than I can in a written comment. But sometimes I get stuck on what to say beyond the usual great job or needs improvement.
Yeah.
Does Schechter offer any advice for providing more specific and actionable feedback?
He does. He suggests focusing on specific moments in the audio, maybe highlighting a particularly effective transition or a well-crafted sound effect.
Okay.
He also encourages teachers to ask students questions about their creative choices, prompting them to reflect on their process and think critically about their work.
I love that. It's about turning feedback into a conversation, a collaborative process where students feel supported and encouraged to grow as audio creators. And I think that's what's so inspiring about Schechter's entire approach to audio in education.
Yeah, it's not just about the technology. It's about empowering students to find their voices, share their stories, and connect with the world in meaningful ways. And who knows, maybe some of these students will go on to become the next generation of podcasters, radio producers, or audio engineers.
That would be incredible. But even if they don't pursue audio as a career, the skills they develop through these projects, critical thinking, collaboration, communication, creativity, those are skills that will serve them well no matter what path they choose.
Exactly. And that's why I'm so excited about the potential of audio to transform learning. It's about so much more than just creating a podcast or recording a speech. It's about tapping into a powerful medium that can engage students, amplify their voices, and help them develop essential skills for the 21st century.
This deep dive has been such an incredible journey. We've covered so much ground, from the why of using audio in education to the nitty-gritty details of equipment, editing, feedback, and sharing. I'm feeling so inspired and ready to embark on my own audio adventures, and I have a feeling our listeners are feeling the same way.
I hope so. And remember, Schechter's presentation is just the starting point.
Right.
There's a whole world of audio resources and inspiration out there waiting to be discovered.
Speaking of inspiration, I wouldn't feel right letting our listeners go without one final thought-provoking question to ponder as they embark on their own audio journeys.
Oh, I was hoping you'd say that. So here it is. What's one audio creation myth you're ready to bust?
Okay.
Maybe it's the belief that you need fancy equipment to create great audio, or that editing is too complicated,
Right.
or that you're not creative enough to come up with engaging audio content. Whatever it is, challenge those limiting beliefs and embrace the power of audio.
I love that challenge. It's time to ditch the excuses and dive headfirst into the world of audio creation. And remember, we're here to cheer you on every step of the way. Share your audio adventures with us on social media using #DeepDiveAudio. We can't wait to hear what you create.
That's a wrap on our deep dive into audio adventures ahoy. We hope you enjoyed the journey as much as we have. Now go forth and make some noise.